Yeah, right now it's kind of a weird time because I feel like the whole industry is like really horny about AI. They're like drunk. They're like AI, we want it. Like, what do we want it for? I'm like, I don't know, but we need it. We need it now. All right, all right, bro. And so, I think what the industry is doing is they're seeing AI as like basically a way to commoditize design, right? And it's like anything. Like we'll take forget like design for a second. We'll just be like, okay, cool. So it's like a factory floor. You like, you put in your like raw materials, and then you get out like like a fancy design, and it's cool. But what people are realizing is like the process is not fucking magic. Like it actually does take somebody who's a trained operator to understand how to work this shit and how whether or not the quality is like what it needs to be, and whether or not it accounts for the use cases that it needs to be. Because if the whole point of a designer is to take in all the context, the problems from the business as well as the users, take all that shit, cut away the shit that doesn't work, and at the very end have a fucking plate that's ready to eat, right? But if you get a dish that maybe looks edible, but maybe it's got like shotgun buckshot in it, and you're like, oh well, fuck, I gotta pick this out. Oh, there's like 50 more of these. All right, I gotta pick that out. It's like, bro, what's the point? You should have just like hired a designer from the beginning to get you to where you needed to go.
Welcome back to Swirl Radio. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm Ika. At Swirl Radio, we stand for those who messed up, ruined relationships,
Bombed the grade, said the wrong thing, lost the ideal client.
overpromised, underdelivered, showed up late, and missed their shot.
Today, we brought in someone who spent years of being a designer nobody noticed. He did the work, got the results, and watched the promotion
go to someone else who just was better at being visible.
And instead of staying bitter about it, he figured out what actually is going on and started teaching other designers the stuff nobody else would say out loud.
We are excited to welcome someone who's been a designer for 18 years, led teams at Disney, Live Nation, and Crunchyroll, built Dark UX Academy because nobody else was saying the stuff designers actually need to hear. Welcome, James. How you doing, James? Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
What's up, party people? Yeah, so my name is James Sue. I'm based in Los Angeles, California. Thank you guys for doing your research. I didn't even tell you any of that, and I was like, wow, they know so much about me.
Dope. Well, James, everyone that comes on this podcast, I ask one of the same questions because in our professional world, we market ourselves in different ways. And one of the biggest platforms that we market ourselves on is LinkedIn. So I'm going to direct this question to you. If LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow and we all had to reintroduce ourselves without the titles, without the resumes, I would like to know, what would you lead with and what would you want to know about someone else?
Sure. I tell people this is a little self-made title I made for myself. I call myself the Dark UX Master. And what I mean by that is I have mastered the art of influence, which is just learning how to talk to people and learning how to make them feel heard and cared for. And ultimately, like you can use this skill and said in another way, when you put it into a corporate setting, it's influence is actually just politics. And you might hear a lot of designers and design leaders talk about this, like, I hate politics. And the quote that always comes to mind for me when somebody says that they hate politics is this thing from Plato. And Plato says, to abstain from politics is to be governed by your inferiors. So said in another way, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah.
I like that. That's dope.
I love that.
The reason why I created Dark UX Academy is because I myself suffered in my own career. You guys touched on it a little bit, where I would constantly have these feelings of like, don't they get it? Don't they know what I do? Don't they know that I studied at this school and I studied with this squad and that I know my shit? And why don't they respect me? How come they're just giving me the jeer ticket without even asking what to do? They're not even putting me in the room. And so like, I like to use these stories that help other people really understand it. So the way it feels like is like they're at the adults table and you're not invited. And you're at the kids table, but you're like, hey, I should be sitting there with you. I should be talking about things. Like, why? You're at the kids table. You're good. You don't even know we're going to be talking adult things. And you're like, wait, I'm an adult too, but they don't see that.
Wow.
Right,
I love the way you
right.
said that.
Good way to
Well,
put it.
okay. So let's go back. So now we got a little sense of like who you are now and that sort of energy. But can you take us back about like, let's go back to where you grew up. What was your
Hmm.
world like? And who was your biggest influence?
Oh man, that's a crazy one, right? So I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and that's kind of an interesting thing because whenever I meet anybody here in LA, most of the time I say like 80% of the time, it's people who uh moved to LA from somewhere else. And so like you were born here? I'm like, yeah, I was born in this shit show. And so I take it for granted, right? People are like, oh, you go to Disneyland all the time. Like, fuck no, I don't go to Disneyland all the time. I was like, you want to do that? And I just take it all for granted. And so whenever I talk to people, all different walks of life, all different places, they're like, oh, Los Angeles, that's a great place. And I have to like recognize that. It's like, oh, this in for a lot of people in their mind, like it's like this dream place where your Hollywood dream comes true. And I think that's absolutely the case. But for me, I grew up in the ghetto. I mean, I grew up in El Sereno, so it's like technically the hood, but like I'm not hood. So like, I was like the Chinese kid that grew up with the Mexicans. And so I have a Hispanic like childhood where I would be invited to my Mexican friends birthdays and parties, and like where they would have all sorts of gatherings. And so I have what I call a proper Hispanic childhood. um and so I have I have a lot of roots to the Hispanic community here in LA, and I feel very like at home. So that's kind of me in at least like my upbringing. So it was a little bit of a what I call a Fresh Prince story, where my mom was like seeing that I was starting to hang out with like the wrong Asians. They call them AZNs, so they're like gangster Asians. And she was like, oh, I don't want you hanging out with those kids. So she moved me to Orange County, which is like, yeah, more of a rich,
Oh
like
yeah.
white area of LA.
Right.
So I ended up having like my middle school and high school in Cerritos. So I grew up with the gangster Korean kids instead of the gangster Asian kids in LA. Um, I went to school in Pomona, at Cal Poly Pomona, studied graphic design. At that time I thought I was a little shit. I thought that now I'm a big but I thought I knew everything. I was like, I learned typography, I learned color theory, I know everything about design. I know how to do type art, how to do branding, logos, websites. And for me, like even at that time, I thought websites were just this like this is actually what I thought. This is before I wrote responsive web design, desktop only. And I was like, websites are just like a layout that you put like a tracing paper on top of, and you can click things.
Well, I mean, it started like that in
Right.
Photoshop, right?
Right. And so I was like, I know graphic design. I know the internet. I know how to design for this. And I was like, man, I was like so green that I don't even know what I didn't know.
You said in high school you started looking at graphic design. So I wanted to know, like, when did design actually find you? Like, when did you start there? Like, was that the plan real early in life, or like when did it hit you?
I was always kind of creative. I was doing weird things, but I didn't think of myself as like a creative person until or at least not as a creative professional until college. And so my background, I started out as a computer science major, and that's a little bit of like family and childhood trauma where like, didn't want to disappoint my mom and got to make a desirable salary in corporate. And my mom's like, you're not going to be a doctor, you're not going to be a lawyer, you better work with computers. And I'm like, all right. And so I'm like, comp sci is going to be the way. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's going to pay something. The way I realized that I was not going to make it in computer science is my very first year. I was like, oh shit, my math requirement doesn't even meet the like bare minimum requirements for the computer science. And so
Oh man.
I don't know how many of y'all are like really into math, but like the bare minimum is going to be like calculus. And for me, I had got taken up like algebra 2, and I was like, oh shit, I'm like like two rungs below. I was like, okay, so I got to take like statistics and I got to take trigonometry. And so I put myself through stats and trig, and bro, I had a hard time, like a really hard time with it. Like I didn't pass like stats my first time, and then trig was really hard for me too. And so I feel like I dragged my nuts across the finish line where I was like, oh my God, this is painful, right? It was so bad for me. And after getting over that line for trigonometry, I was like, yo, I don't think computer science is for me.
Right,
'Cause
right.
that was just to get to the start line for comp sci. So
Wow.
in that year, I was like, all right, fuck it, I got to give design a try. And so fortunately, my college had a design program. So I took intro to design with one of my very first most influential professors named Anne Fong, beautiful, sweet, talented, kind Vietnamese woman. And I remember she was known for her tough love. And so she would say shit like, she's like, oh, you're having a hard time. Well, you should just quit right now and save yourself the trouble so you don't have to wait like 10, 15 years.
Right.
Oh, that's good.
Oh man.
I remember being like, oh man, I want to prove her wrong and I want her to be proud of the work that I'm doing. And we weren't even doing anything crazy. We were doing like live drawings. We were doing like compositions with like pencil and paper. And she was great at roasting us. She made me feel bad, but bad in a way is like, I gotta show up better.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And that class kind of changed everything for me because once I was able to pass that, and at some point I realized I was like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I'm getting the recognition that I wanted to get. I was like, fuck it, that wasn't an intro. That's like the beginning of my origin story.
I can really relate. You know, there's always that one teacher that tells you the truth, and that's the teacher you remember and respect. Um, what was your earliest failure that you remember, and how did that shape you as a creative?
Yeah, I want to talk about this very specific moment. Like it kind of burned itself as a core like negative memory for me. One of my very first jobs outside of college, I thought I was doing great because graduated in the summer, and then by like September, I was working, and it was dope. I was making 45 grand a year, and I thought, holy shit, you go from 0 to 45 grand, like holy fuck, I'm rich.
Right.
I'm,
Top of the world.
Exactly.
80,000 tacos at Jack in the Box,
Right.
and like, bro, I can eat forever. And and I remember I was working at the startup, but they're doing a bunch of shady shit. And what we used to do is this like video arbitrage thing where we would make these like websites that had it was like their own little video hub that was like specialized content. So it'd be like around gardening and like car culture and like, you name it, like cooking stuff. And so we'd buy a bunch of stuff and then we'd run ads to it and then we'd sell the ad placements. Sounds pretty shady when I describe it actually. But it's just this weird business where you're like, oh yeah, you need ads. We got a website. We'll run your shit to our website. Um, but I remember I had Photoshop open and I was designing this like 300 by 250 ad for do you know what a Snuggie is?
No, what's the Snuggie?
Yeah.
A Snuggie is a blanket with
Oh, it's those yeah, the blankets that had the holes in them
Oh,
that you snuggle with?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. So a Snuggie is a blanket with sleeves. And I remember I was making this 300 by 250 and I was just going crazy on the shit. This is before AI remove background existed. So you have to, if you wanted to mask something out, you had to like do it legit with the pen tool. And I remember I'd like nod off like doing that shit. And I was fucking doing this like 300 by 250 ad for the Snuggie. And I was looking at it and I was going crazy. And I'd spent a long time working on it. And I said to myself, like, is this the fucking reason why I went to design school to make these fucking Snuggie ads? I was like, is this what my career is gonna be? And this was like year 1, year 2, and I was like, bro, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I
Right.
gotta do something
Right.
more meaningful. And so,
Yeah.
that was my very first job ever where I was just like learning about what working in corporate was like. And I thought, like I said, at that time, I thought I knew everything. So there's a name for it. It's called the Noah's Trap. And the Noah's Trap is just you feeling and thinking like you know everything. You're like, no. What you're saying is wrong. I know I'm right. Like you probably have met people like that in your life. You're like, all right, they're not open-minded to anything new. And there's another word for it, which is like a fixed mindset. It's people with a closed
Mhm.
mind, right? And at that time, I was very much like that. And so, when you say, what was one of these early memories where like that was really pivotal for you? It's like I had to like look at myself, like I look at the man in the mirror and be like, is this what I want for myself? Because like that's the track that I'm on right now.
So I'm gonna pivot from, the career side of things because I read somewhere that you spent a crazy amount of time thinking about how to survive a zombie apocalypse. For one, I want to know, is it true? And if it is, I just got to hear about this.
Yeah, 100%. I love zombie apocalypse survival catastrophization, and some of it is a little bit like just my obsession with zombie apocalypse survival, and a little bit is my own childhood trauma for my mom because like I don't know how many of your listeners are like grew up with this like childhood Asian trauma where they're like you better not leave the back door open otherwise a murderer is gonna come in and kill the whole family. I'm like holy shit, they just like up the stakes for every
Oh,
like
wow.
mistake that you could ever make, and it's like oh shit, better not do that because the whole family will end right here. And like I remember one time I just got my driver's permit, and I was driving, my mom and our family, and my mom was like, "You better not crash the car. We got the whole, like, generation of the family in here." I was like, "Damn, mom."
That's
I was like,
pressure.
"Nope."
That's
Yeah,
That's
pressure.
pressure, yeah. I would just pull over.
right, and so, the fun thing for me is to channel a little bit of that into, like, something that's fun to think about, which is like, okay, let's imagine, you know, Walking Dead was real. I was like, "Where would you go?" I was like and I like to think about that as a thought exercise. I'm like, maybe, like, Costco?" But then, like, you guys everyone's gonna be going to Costco. You're gonna be have to
That's
fight,
smart,
you know
actually.
right, so, like, if you get tired fighting one dude, you're gonna have to fight, like, 200 more of them after that.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just a fun little exercise, and that kind of combines with my other hobbies, which is like working on my car, riding bicycles, riding motorcycles. I was like, okay, well, how many of these are going to be actually useful? I was like, well, the car, you're going to run out of gas at some point, and like you got to like have a battery. Like you're probably going to not be able to get access to AutoZone in a post-apocalyptic world.
Right.
There's no 3-year warranties that they're honoring there. So I was like, bicycle's probably the best.
Oh, wow, and that's
Ride a
how you got
bike.
into motorcycles, or you just kinda enjoyed the
It's just a fun thought exercise, right? And so, like, I think this is the reason why it kinda lends itself into, what I do for work, like, in terms of just, like, thinking about use cases for software design, because 'cause you're thinking about the worst case scenario, what could possibly happen, and then ultimately, what systems you have in place to account for that worst case scenario.
Oh, I like that. I guess I never thought that deeply about it. It makes it a fun exercise because you can talk about a zombie apocalypse. It's kind of like there's that surface level thinking, and then there's that deeper thinking, like what do I really need? Who do I really want around me? So it makes a
Right.
lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
um, so I actually wanted to circle back to what you previously said about looking at that man in the mirror. How did you kind of break through that? Or like what was that moment where you like figured out how to do better and not have to design these what are they called? Fuzzies?
Snuggies.
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 Right?
Snuggies.
Yeah, honestly, I think the short answer is just, like, suffer for a certain number of years, and you're not the first person to ask me. They're like, "Well, James, how do you figure out, like, all the gaps in leadership that you talk about, and how did you figure out, like, what it is that you wanted to be as a designer? Like, what did you want out of life?" I'm like, "These questions are incredibly personal to yourself. Like your
Mm,
idea of a rich life, like one of my best friends and my best designer, her idea of a rich life is sitting in her room playing Pokemon and no one talks to her, no one DMs her. And like she only DMs you if she wants to talk to you. Like and that's a great life and that's gonna look different for everyone, right? Like my idea of it is like going to Japan like 4 times a year and like, swiping my card at any place I want to and not thinking about how much it costs.
mhm.
And so
Right.
that you have to think about that, but in the perspective of what it is that you want out of your career. And I think that answer has changed for me in terms of like where I've been. So earlier in my career, it was about like logo chasing. Like for a long time, I was like obsessed with like fan companies, like specifically Google. I thought like, oh, if I get a job at Google, all my problems will be solved. Like I'll
Yep.
immediately be like top, like number one. Like you search like, best designer in the world, the number one spot. Like look, has a picture of James too, and I thought that would be so cool. But like you asked like today me about that. And I'm like, fuck no, I don't want to work at a fan company. Like you're gonna have to fucking kill me to fucking get me over there, dude. It's like and that just comes from time experience and also different perspectives. And like one of the things that gave me the biggest amount of perspective was my close encounter with death, right? And so, to make a long story short, I got a spider bite. I was real sick in the hospital for about a month. I almost died, and in that timing where I was like, having a bunch of mental breakdowns and like having to look at my mortality in life, I was like, am I happy with what I've accomplished? Am I like, do I have the things that I want in life that I actually value? And when I was laying there in that hospital bed, peeing into a bottle every night, and there's only so many times that you can be like fire in the hole, and it's funny, and it's like a couple hundred times.
Oh my
But
god, dang.
yeah, yeah, but
Well
then when you're sitting there, you're sitting with your own thoughts, and it gets kind of dark, right? Where you're like, am I like what's important to me right now? It wasn't the money, it wasn't the jobs, it wasn't the title, and it wasn't like I was like, I'll give away the house, I'll give away my cars, I'll give away my whole like bank account right now. And all I want is to number one be healthy, and number two to just go home and hang out with my wife. I was like, I'll fucking give away everything right now, and I've been fortunate enough to have like two experiences like that. So that first time I got sick, and then the other time, January 2025 with the LA wildfires. So my house is in a
Mm.
city called Tahunga, and it's not a cool city, but it's a beautiful city, and it's sandwiched between I was sandwiched between 2 fires. It was the Eaton fire and the Hearst fire, and so, like, I was watching this when I was in Japan, and I was like, the fires are, like, going towards my house. I was like, what happens if it burns up everything?" And, the thought that I had to think of, I was like, "Well, I'm gonna lose everything," and, but in my mind, I was like, "As long as I have my pets and, like, our wedding photos and my wife," I was like, "I can always rebuild," and you're gonna laugh at this. I learned that from Minecraft.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Because I was like,
Wow.
Bro, I've died in Minecraft and lost everything." And I was like, "What
Right.
do I do?" Like, "Fuck it. Gotta restart, baby."
Oh my
Wow. I
god.
never thought about it like that.
No, that's interesting. I do notice that, like, games really teach you a lot, and I've grown an appreciation for it. Being around gamers, I see it with the stepkids and everything. What kind
Mm.
of spider was it?
Well, I don't even know to this day. I was just watering my lawn, and, it I didn't even feel it. It was, but it wasn't even the bite, it was, like, the infection, 'cause I thought it was a
Wow.
mosquito bite, but I kept scratching it because, like, that's what you do when you get a mosquito bite. You're like, "Oh, it's itchy, I'm gonna
Right.
scratch it." And then it got infected, because you remember when you were a kid, they're like, you better put some, alcohol on that so it doesn't get an infection,"
Right.
and, it's a
Right.
big deal, dude.
Wow. Was your house good, or
Well, yeah,
did you
like
get
yeah,
affected?
I'm very lucky. My house did not catch on fire, but, it was a real thought, and, like,
Yeah.
real people lost their whole lives, and, you look at that stuff and it looks like, it's like a story that you're like, "Oh, yeah, that bad thing happened," but, it's not gonna
Yeah.
happen to me, but, like, it could have, and it happened to people I know, and they were that
Yeah.
everything they had is gone.
So I actually wanted to jump into sort of your journey into self-improvement and community building. I think a lot of designers feel like they have to stay in a box, and having interests outside of that craft is, like, very important. And I was curious, how did that make you a better designer, having those kind of other interests?
Yeah, so for me, they gave me a lot of, like solidarity, right? And so I actually think the reason why most design leaders are stuck in a box is because that's the environment that they just happen to be in. They just don't have any other boxes. And so because I'm a hobby hoarder, I have all these other boxes where I can go and I can talk shit and there's no stakes. And like, like I do jujitsu and I go and do jujitsu and I'm pissed. And then like we're just like fighting each other. And then I'm telling them about what's going on. Like, man, that sucks. And then that's it. Like I get to go home and like nothing else happens. But if
Right.
you like try to talk shit at work, like it's a totally different game. Like you got to worry about like, is this person my ally or my enemy? Are they going to take this information and gossip? Is it going to hurt
Mm.
me in some way? Is it going to be like political, like, what's the word? Like leverage? And like, that's the thing that's literally the reason why I created Dark UX Academy is to talk about all this stuff. The thing that I've learned from talking to like hundreds of designers, well, at this point, it's probably thousands, and design leaders is that they're all lonely. And they're
Oh,
lonely
yeah.
because they feel like they're going through this shit by themselves. And like, yeah, you have your work friends, your work wife, and your work husband, people you talk with, but like there's no like safe place to just like go and be like, what the fuck? Do you guys suffer from this too? Like, is it fucked up at your company like this? And then like people actually be like, yeah, it is. And this is what I've done to deal with it. And so that's what I started creating was a small community of design leaders who just are able to have a place to vent, to talk, to share ideas and strategies. And for people who actually need like more hands-on help, that's what I help with them with my mentorship and training.
I love
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Uh,
Why
So
dark UX?
So the first initial thought was that like, oh, you got to understand. So it kind of comes from like both like ethical and unethical design, right? And my thoughts around it are like they're all just tools. And the easiest
Mhm.
way I like to explain it is talking about like Star Wars. People talk about like the light side of the Force and the dark side of the
Oh.
right. And as a goofy way to think about it, because it's like anything is just a tool. Like you can use a hammer to like build a house or like to break someone's like arm, and it's
right.
just about it's about the way that you use it and also the context. And, the way I'd like to think about it too is like the way I was thinking about Star Wars is like if you've ever played any Star Wars game, like for some reason the light side only has like access to like these whack powers that like are like push people, like push them away. Like it's like dude, do no harm. And I was like, bro, these are the wackest powers. Why does the dark side of the force have the
Right.
dopest ones? They got the zap your ass
They
power,
do.
the choke your ass power, they gotta lift you up and slam you power. And I was like, they're
Right.
just tools. It's like who and then so I think about the application of it. And so the other way I think about it is like, you know, you can use a knife to make a sandwich, or you can use it to cut someone and hurt someone. And so if you're thinking about it like that too, they're all just tools. It's about the application and how it's done. And so the philosophy behind it is understanding the psychology that goes behind all these quote unquote unethical practices, and then empowering design leaders in design organizations where they're under leveraged so they can have access to these tools and understand what's happening on the political layer so that they can build their influence and actually advocate for design and users and actually like a better product overall in a way that where the company actually doesn't value them. And so it's a way to give yourself I'm not going to say an illegal advantage, but an unfair advantage in an environment where everything's already against you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I went to art school and they don't teach you about that in school. It's like they don't let you know about the system and gatekeeping and how to
100%.
yeah, so I definitely see that need.
I know that you help designers who feel ignored, unpaid, overlooked. At one point, you were that designer. So who helped you?
Absolutely. It was a journey. It wasn't ever like any one moment. It was a bunch of moments over several years. So I would say over the last 8 years, I've been able to kind of hone this strategy about what works and what doesn't. But I'll tell you the very first moment that I realized it, it was I joined this company called FabFitFun. And FabFitFun is a women's
Oh,
subscription
yeah.
box company. And what they do is they sell you a box of stuff every quarter. Um, I still have the whole pitch right here. Watch, I want to just go into it's a box of items, 8 to 12 full size, for, you know, they sell for like around $48, but the total MSRP comes out to like $300, right? And so, see, I'm kind of selling you on it now. I remember when I first joined that very first month, we had a team meeting and everyone was talking about all these different business metrics that I had no idea what it was about because my background was in graphic design. It was about typography, craft, understanding, you know, baseline grids and typographic hierarchy. But these are all things that like designers care about, right? This is important to like the craft of design, but it's not important to business at all. Like it is, but only if the right person can articulate the value, right? Like, why do you care about typographic hierarchy? It's like, okay, well, the reason why is because you want someone to read something in a certain way. Because if you read it in the wrong way, it doesn't make sense. And if someone's confused, they're not going to buy this shit.
Mhm.
That's the
Right.
map of tying it all together, right? But at that time, it's just like, well, you know, it looks better, and it just, you know, it feels good and has got a right. It's got a nice rhythm. It's like these are bullshit like design answers, and so the key moment that comes back to me for is we're talking about this thing called CPAs. And it was like almost like a little bit like a cult. So we had these stickers on our laptops, which are I love low CPAs. And I learned this from my CPO at the time. And I was like, what the fuck is a CPA? And it's not a certified public accountant. CPA is an acronym for cost per acquisition. And really what it measures is this business metric CAC, right? Um, and we were talking about how to reduce our acquisition costs. And the way we're doing that is what types of experiments, aka gambles, do we put out into the market to see which one gets, you know, the most bites. And it took me about like 3 months to really wrap my head around what it is that we were doing and learn about how we were experimenting and how we were measuring success that I started to realize, holy shit, I don't know a goddamn thing. Because, you know,
Mhm.
I was thinking about what success looked like for me at the time was if the design looked good, if it was
Mhm.
like visually appealing. But really, the key measure of success in a business is whether or not it is effective for achieving the business's goals. And in a corporate for-profit world, it's usually one of two things: get more customers or keep the customers that we have right now so they can continue to pay us.
Yeah, they don't think that way at all. But how did you start thinking that way? That I still don't see the
Ah,
transition part.
oh yeah, I was forced to. So I was forced to because of the being in that environment. So I learned everything I know from my old CPO. And like for him, he was like, "Yeah, James, I get it. You know how to do all these great design things, but you don't know how to tie it to like what we care about in business." So we had this it's my one of my favorite meetings called GTFO. It's like a weekly meeting. It's called Growth Testing Funnel Optimization.
Oh, wow. Very
Yes.
corporate.
It wasn't get the fuck out. It was growth testing funnel optimization. And in that meeting, he really kind of exposed to me how we look at our different, gambles or said another way, the different hypotheses that we have, which are what ideas do we have that would communicate what our offer is, and how can we get more people to start start a membership here so that they can ultimately pay us, and so we can have like higher top line revenue and do all these things so that we can ultimately be able to kind of expand and continue to do what we're doing. So it was through that process that I was able to see the structure of how he thought, where it's just like, hey, I have an idea, how do we take that idea, turn it into a design, and then how do we define what success is for this hypothesis, and then ultimately how do we run it, make sure that it wasn't bullshit and actually was like statistically significant. So statistics actually comes back into my life later. And then once we have determined a winner, then how do we like bet more on this so that we can actually get more ROI? So said in another way, it's like, what ideas do we have? How do we know we're not just gambling our money away? How do we actually know it's a winner? And then when we do find a winner, how do we put more money on that winner so that we can
Mhm.
earn money while we're gambling?
And so part of what you teach is that language to creatives so they can use that language to kind of push their designs. Does that sound a bit accurate?
Absolutely. So there's four main pillars of what I talk about for gaps for design leadership. First one is business acumen. It's just the ability to tie design to business outcomes. The second is influence, aka organizational politics. The third is about visibility, because this is also me. I like, oh, the work speaks for itself. Like, don't you know what I do here? Like, no, nobody fucking knows what you do here, James. Like,
Right.
you always have to be promoting yourself. And the last one is just system operations, and that's just like having systems in place so that you don't have to do all the work yourself. So I talk about influence a lot, but that's actually
Mhm.
just a symptom. And so the symptom often looks like this: how come they don't respect me? I don't have a seat at the table. They keep giving me like the orders, and I just have to like dunk the fries and flip the burger. Like they think that design is just decoration. And the reason why is because there's nothing being checked off in terms of competency for business acumen. So business acumen is actually the prerequisite to be able to influence. Because if you can't tell people that you know how the game works, then they're going to assume you don't know how to play the game. So let's
Mhm.
take this out of the equation for a second. Let's talk about something simple like basketball. If I'm like, oh yeah, I'm great at basketball, but then I'm like, what's a free throw? Or what do you mean by 3-pointer? That's a low
Mhm.
competence shooter that I've never balled before, right? And so
Yeah.
that's literally how it comes across. It's like, I don't think this guy balls.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a good example, actually.
So you got promoted to leadership and said you spent your first year trying to be the best version of your old job instead of learning what the new one required. What did that cost you?
No, man, that happens to so many people, myself included. So the reason why is because nobody ever tells you that the job is different. And so the assumption is I feel pretty confident. I've got no stats for this, but I feel confident saying like a majority of design leaders get promoted into leadership this way, where they say, hey, James, you're good at designing. Why don't you run the team? And that's how you become the manager. That's how you become the director.
Mhm.
That's some kind of leader.
Right.
And being an individual contributor and IC on a team is very different than running the team, because now you're the team captain. Now you're responsible for the entire performance of the team. And also you're accountable for its output as well as its outcomes. And so really you've just inherited a giant problem. And so your job isn't to like throw the game winning pass or to make the game winning like shot anymore. Your job is to make sure that you have the right players that work well enough together and they understand what the rules are and they know what the goal looks like and that they're always trying to take their shots. Like if you have people just fighting with each other and being like, hey, why am I talking about sports analogies? I don't even like sports. But if they're arguing with each other, if they're arguing with each other about how, why'd you pass it this way, not that way? And like, I was wide open. Like, bro, you're forgetting the whole point. Everyone's supposed to be shooting right now.
Right. Got to be on the same page.
100%. So to tie it back to kind of like leadership, the job that's required is to be able to align stakeholders to articulate the value of design. That's called design advocacy, aka sale. And so that's why I think sales is the most underrated skill in design leadership, is because if you're working with people, you're working in sales, baby. You have to convince. buy into you as well as your team, your competence, your capabilities, your team's capabilities, and their ability to deliver outcomes. And so everyone kind of has to be on board with that. And I've worked on teams where like there's definitely been gaps where some people just acting really green, really immature, like they don't actually understand. They get their feelings hurt, they get their egos hurt, and it's like really not about that. Some people are gonna hate me for saying this shit, but I'm not gonna stop saying it. It's all about Janet Jackson, baby. And what I
What?
mean it's all about Janet Jackson. And what I mean by that is it's all about what have you done for me lately? Because Janet Jackson is your boss. It's the CEO of your company. It's your cross-functional partners. They're always asking you, "What have you done for me lately?" And what that means is, what value can you deliver? And like, it comes down to what problems are you helping me solve, and are they, it doesn't matter if you helped me solve them like 1, 2, 3 years ago. It's like I got problems today, and like, what have you done for me lately? And so if you
Right.
want your seat at the table, you always got to be bringing home the wins. And that's just kind of the sad reality of like working in corporate. And that's how you win is it's a combination of things. One is actually doing the job. And then two, it's making sure that all the wins that you get, you're getting the recognition for them. So that's the visibility piece. And then three, it's also about understanding the lay of the land, who actually has power, what they want, how to communicate to them, and then ultimately to sell them on your ideas so that your ideas get funded, your projects are greenlit, and they're prioritized correctly. Because otherwise, what's going to end up happening is you're abstain. If you abstain from politics, you're destined to be governed by your inferiors. And so what ends up happening is someone's idea out prioritizes yours, and then you're building something that you think is not great or really dumb, and and then you're like not realizing the impact of what it is that you could actually be making in the organization. And so as a result, they're doing their play and not yours. And then, when that play fucks up, you're like, I fucking told you. And then like you just stuck anyway, because like that's the play that was approved. Yeah, what ends up happening is you get even more frustrated, and then that's why people turn over and they quit, right? Because they're like, "Well, do I want to stay on this team? Is this team whack? Do they even believe in me? Or like, I'm going to find a different team, or I'm going to make my own. I'm going to make my own league, and I'm going to recruit my own players." And why do I keep using sports analogies? I don't like sports.
I
It
don't know.
worked. It worked.
I had questions about leadership. There's something I'm a little stuck on because your Dark UX Academy is actually very difficult in my head. I'm extroverted, but all
Mm.
of the best designers, to be honest with you, I've met are very introverted. They're kind of that person that you described that prefers to play Pokemon Go. Like they like their solitude. How the hell do you train these people to be good communicators and salespeople? Do you have like a process where you just like tell people they can't do it? Because not everyone can, right?
So it is a skill, and the great thing about skills is you can get better at them. You may like spend your life trying to become a master of something, but the whole point is improvement. And you first start with awareness for what the skill looks like and what good looks like. And I feel like that's where so many people they just don't know. They don't know that they're not aware that they're selling. First of all, so as a result, they don't
Mm.
sell anything, and they just show up and like, how come they didn't trust me with the project? I'm like, motherfucker, you didn't sell them.
You didn't sell them.
Oh,
You
I
didn't
see what
That's
you're
sell
why
them.
they don't
saying.
trust you. But in order to be able to do that, you have to understand what trust looks like, right? And there's 4 elements of it. It's from this book called Thin Book of Trust. It's around sincerity, reliability, care, and competence. And like every time that I've seen a designer fall flat on their face, they've like basically unchecked one of these, but they had no idea it was happening. And then they're like, "What do you mean they don't trust me? They don't." And I'm like, "Bro, you're not even showing that you care about them, because they literally just said I'm worried about this, and then you didn't even talk about it." And so it's what's crazy is a lot of this is building your own self awareness around it is other people, but also like emotional intelligence around like what it is that they care about, and then how you show up for them. And then in terms of like your question, which is like how do you overcome this gap for introverted people who have to get into this like sales mode? It's a skill, and so like not everyone's good at it, but like for some people, it's more work than others. But the first step is just understanding what it looks like. And then two, there is like mental preparations. Like, okay, cool. I'm going to be like on stage. So being on stage means that I have to like assume this persona, and then that's work, right? And then you have to like go into sales, alignment, all this stuff. And then like, you like take it off once you're like off the camera. And that's just what it is. That's what a job is. Doing stuff you don't want to do for money.
Yeah, that's true. Otherwise, we'd all be kind of doing our own thing, riding motorcycles and going to Japan all the time, right? And not working in like corporate. If you didn't work, because I know like right now you're working at a big company, but like if you had the opportunity to kind of be freer and sort of do your own thing, would you continue UX Academy or would you leave design altogether? I'm curious.
No, this is exactly what I would be doing. So I think about that a lot, which is like, okay, let's imagine like for whatever reason, I wave a magic wand and I have all the money in the world. And I was like, what would I be doing? I was like, would I retire? Like, no, I would probably like take a little bit of time off, but I would just be doing this. I would just be building Dark UX Academy and helping people. Cause like this is actually something that makes me really fulfilled. And I think not enough people are talking about it. And then as a result, people are like, oh, UX is like a dead end career. Like, I shared the stage with Don Norman, who's one of the godfathers of UX. And we spoke at an event called DDX in Tokyo. And he himself, the man himself said, design is not powerful in organizations. And like, no disrespect, but I'm like, yeah, no shit, dude. Like they don't need to be told what the problem is. They need solutions for how to deal with it. And the path forward is to understand the politics at play, to understand how to influence the decisions. And then in order to do that, you have to have business acumen to understand how capitalism actually works, because that's the price you pay to actually be in the room. And once you're in the room, it's about whether or not they like you and whether or not they trust you and whether or not, surprise, surprise, you can fucking sell them on your ideas.
I know you talk about negotiation, like, for more money. How does that play into that? Like, what's the biggest mistake designers make when they're playing that game, that sales game?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about influence is it has many different applications. And so some of the most successful ones for my mentees are around uh, salary negotiation, right? And so I have to kind of explain it to them from both the hiring manager perspective and like help them see it from their like applicant perspective about what the game is that's going on, so that they can understand and like know what phase they're at, so they can know what they're focusing on. And so like some of my mentees are in like active negotiations right now. They're like, well, should I ask for this and ask for that? I'm like, no, 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 no. I was like, you're assuming that it's already a done deal and closed. I was like, we're not closed yet. Like you actually have to get them to commit and like to jump in the water. And once they're in the water, then you can negotiate with them. And like these are the different levers that you have access to. And, you can ask for them in a really respectful way that's not really insulting, where you have room to kind of go back and forth. And they both respect and expect highly qualified candidates to do this. And so that's just one application is like, if you're unhappy with your job, you either get a promotion and like maybe you are happier, or you find a new job, right? So that's one way to leverage influence in sales and business acumen. And the other is like when you're working in a company, let's say you are happy, like you want more interesting projects, you want more responsibilities, you want to be leveled up, you want to go to C-level. Like you're not going to be able to do any of that without influence. And the reason why is because people have to trust you, and they have to trust in your competence and your leadership to be able to rise up, to be able to kind of lead strategy and understand what you're talking about. And in order to do that, that's another application of influence and trust and business acumen. And then the other kind of more like negative side of things was like when someone's in the doghouse, you have to kind of build awareness for where you're at and like what it is that you're trying to get out of. And so if you decide you want to stay in an organization, and you have to recognize all these like dark patterns that might be happening to you, like maybe you're being gate kept from something, or maybe something's going on behind the scenes that you don't have proof of, but you like feel something sketchy is happening. It's like I help my mentees with that too. It's like, okay, we got to understand what situation we're in, and we're going to either choose to minimize the damage, and give yourself like best possible scenario, or like full Uno reverse and get yourself out of this. And like that's a decision too. Both are work,
Yeah, they both take a separate perspective too. You don't like when you're in it, you don't really know what to do.
right?
Let me take a step back because you're well connected in the design world, right? So um, you see the direction and where design is going right now, and I'm curious to know how you feel about it. But also, if you can change the industry in about 5 or 10 years from now, like what would you do different?
Yeah, right now it's kind of a weird time because I feel like the whole industry is like really horny about AI. They're like drunk. They're like, it's like AI, we want it. Like, what do we want it for? I'm like, I don't know, but we need it. Okay, we need it now.
Right.
All right. All right, bro. And so, I think what the industry is doing is they're seeing AI as like basically a way to commoditize design, right? It's like anything. Like we'll forget like design for a second. We'll just be like, okay, cool. So it's like a factory floor. You like, you put in your like raw materials, and then you get out like like a fancy design, and it's cool. But what people are realizing is like the process is not fucking magic. Like it actually does take somebody who's a trained operator to understand how to work this shit, and how whether or not the quality is like what it needs to be, and whether or not it accounts for the use cases that it needs to be. Because if the whole point of a designer is to take in all the context, the problems from the business as well as the users, take all that shit, cut away the shit that doesn't work, and at the very end have a fucking plate that's ready to eat, right? But if you get a dish that maybe looks edible, but maybe it's got like, shotgun buckshot in it, and you're like, oh well, fuck, I gotta pick this out. Oh, there's like 50 more of these. All right, I gotta pick that out. It's like, bro, what's the point? You should have just like hired a designer from the beginning to get you to where you needed to go. And I think that the industry is ready to recognize that because they're trying to compress the value of design as a production output, and that's like totally the wrong way to think about it. Because design is not an artifact. Design is an experience and it's an outcome. So like when you press a button because you drank too much that night and you like suddenly have a car in front of you that's going to drive you home, someone thought about that as an idea, and then as a result they turn that into an application, and then that became a back-end service where like there's a network of drivers ready to pick up someone and a network of people who need a ride home, and boom, you have an entire fucking experience, and like that's worth something. And the takeaway is like, whoa, that was magical, right? But it's not just engineering. It's not just like a fucking JPEG. It's not just one like Figma wireframe or one user flow. It's like an entire system of how this thing works. And so right now, I think the industry is over-indexing into commoditizing and thinking that design is a lower value than it is. So as a result, you're seeing slower job growth in the job market for design roles because companies are thinking that AI can replace designers. And what's going to happen is they're going to see their quality of their product like really start to take a dive, and as a result, like this is the part that nobody's able to articulate for them because there's this gap in influence and business acumen. Is that when you have a shittier product, guess what happens? People stop fucking buying it. And when they stop buying it, that's bad for business. Because guess what happens? If you pay more to operate the business than the money that you make, that's not a business. That's a charity. You're just giving money away. So I think in terms of my prediction for what's going to happen in the market is these companies are they're not going to realize this insight until they're in pain. And so they're going to be like, oh fuck, now we need designers, but we need designers who don't use AI. Because like there's also like the person who delegates their critical thinking they'll take in the PRD and they'll be like, all right, chat GPT, and they'll give it to, give me 3 options, and they'll copy it, and then they'll take that output from an AI LLM, and they'll give it back to their their partner or their design manager, and they'll say, here you go. And like, dude, that's not your job. You're just like not doing your job with more steps in it. And so I think the industry will at some point come back to this like human made desire where they like want people who are thinking critically, who actually understand how to make something from scratch.
Yeah, I can relate to that right now. I'm working on a product, and I love it when my designers actually like show me a sketch like with pencil and paper. I'm like, yeah, I love seeing that. It lets you think clear. James, do you have anything else you want to share, or any last words, or any last sort of advice to people who are in transition, trying to get like that leadership role, trying to be taken more seriously at their current company?
Yeah, my thoughts and my advice are AI has changed the entire landscape. So there was a world where you could just get by on the craft, but if you want to succeed as a designer and especially as a design leader, your job is to understand business, and that is the prerequisite to being able to influence people. And without the two of them, like you're gonna have a hard time being a designer in 2026 in the future. And the beautiful thing is AI cannot do these things. It might be able to do some of them to some degree, but like it's not going to be able to go into a room of executives and sell everyone on why this idea is the one we should move forward with. So hopefully that helps everybody. If you're interested in finding me, I'm just under James Sue, or you could just look up Dark UX Academy, also available at darkuxacademy.com.